right, you know what's happening. It's gonna get on with it. You know, I made that intro to Bob Lazar stuff from 3 odd years ago, and it's hard to get music off the internet these days that doesn't get tagged as somebody else's. So there's supposed to be all kinds of free stuff, but in reality, a lot of that free stuff isn't free. There's actually a couple tricks to how to tag it and to utilize it. Even so, trying to find something that sounds modulated, that's pretty jarring opening for music, and that's not something I prefer. I have a little bit more mellower stuff for my other channel that, you know, neither here nor there. That said, let's get on with crap, right? Let's get on with the rant and the rave, because that's how we're going to do shit today. Because we're looking at this trans, whatever the hell you want to call it, debate and crisis in America today. I'm sorry, America. Why the fuck you care? Seriously, why the fuck do you care? How many trans anybody have you ever personally met? That you actually know has been through this life-changing procedures that they chose. They chose. Nobody forced it on them. I mean, I get tired of listening to this. Oh, I gotta make them stop mutilating children. I'm sorry, man, but I have never heard in my entire lifetime of any state in America's mandating that children need to have body mutilation because they think this, that, or the other thing. That ain't happening anywhere. And the only rare exceptions I could possibly envision in my head would be for some catastrophic accident. And we've all been there. Most of us anyway. If you're dumb and you're poor, you grow up in a dumb poor neighborhood like I did, you do a lot of dumb stupid shit. You know, back in the 70s when we had Evel Knievel and all kinds of crazy people jumping all kinds of stuff with motorcycles and cars and whatever they could get to jump stuff, we did a lot of stuff too that could have killed us or worse. And how many times, oh, come on, come on, man, my fellow men out there, come on, man, you're man enough. Some of you women too are probably more men than some of the men I know. But hey, you ever rack your balls on that nice little chunk of metal on your bike? Yeah, always wonder why the men's bikes got a nutcracker designed right into it, where the women's bikes don't. Women's bike got that nice convenient little V there, so you can swing your feet in and out, and not expose your junk when you're getting on and off your bicycle. That's the idea behind that way that was laid out, from my understanding. But so it's kind of like a side saddle thing for if you were riding the old school riding horses. So for the guys, we got that damn bar goes across there, and you jump something and you come down and you miss your cue, you crack yourself on that thing, you're gonna really hurt yourself. Meanwhile, ever have your seat fall off? Ever ride a bike without a seat? Have you ever ridden a bike without a seat? And I don't mean being in a perverted way. I'm just being as that real possibility where that seat's supposed to go. If you come down on that hard enough, you might find yourself having a life-changing surgery that you never expected to have. And so that's just, there are things that can occur that would force that sort of stuff to happen, but it's extremely rare. So that leads us to the next most common debate or common barking point of this social argument, because it's a social thing. This is social bullshit, and nothing to do with running our country or our economy or healthcare in general. No, it's just some tiny little portion that gets extremely blown up. And this is relevant. This is relevant to something that's part of the bigger picture of what's going on in America today compared to historically 1930s Germany once again. Okay, so I'll get to that point. Y'all know it. If you half of you will even begin to watch this video, you already know that I'm talking about this, and I can't be the only person who thinks this way. I can't be. I mean, personally, no offense, and I have done in previous videos. I'm a born-again Christian and part of the Pentecostal faith, and I believe in God. I have faith in that there's something bigger than the rest of us out there. Do I have faith in the church? Fuck, I do. The fuck I do. I have no more faith in them than I do most of the damn entities that we have, in charge of shit. Corporations, government, they all crooked as the day is long. Ain't none of them looking out for you and I. And they all tell you they are. They all sing a song and bullshit you, but they're not. And a big part of how they get away with that kind of crap is by this kind of circus that they're stirring up. Okay. So this here is the Iowa legislature. I'm from the beautiful state of Iowa. This is my home state. Grew up here, spent my whole life here. I've left the state a few times in my life, but obviously came back here. If I had money, I always say there's two kinds of people. There's people that can't afford to move out, and people that are too stupid to. I mean that's because it's just my person. It's a beautiful state and a great place to raise. If you got kids and family, and you want a reasonable pace at life, this is the place to go. There's enough things to do. There's enough venues to go to. Some pretty twisted things you would expect to find in a state capital in a major city, but not as many as you might find somewhere in a major metropolis like Los Angeles or Chicago or something, or New York, because we're not them. The entire population of the state could fit into one of those towns and still have room for relatives and visitors to hang out. No, so this is when they passed the bill to prevent transgender students from participating in high school level sports that doesn't allow for them. So a man who that's converting to a woman or has become a woman is still in essence physically has that male advantage as far as these people are concerned. And I actually have some, I believe that there's a lot of truth in that. There's facts and science to back that very claim up, that it's not really fair for somebody. There's a lot of memes. You go back, like I said, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so there's a lot of 1950s and 60s memes that got played up back then. And one of them that was real popular was when we were lambasting, the Soviet Union, was the Soviet sports stars, obviously pumped up on steroids and competing in women's sports. They got a person that's 6'6" and weighs 200 pounds of solid muscle and got a deeper voice than most men do, and it's a woman but they're pumped up for steroids, or it's actually a man that they're passing off, because that's the sort of crap that sort of society would do. So that's part of that meme, right? That's kind of part of that meme thing that they came up with, was to kind of get you to repeat this crap enough, you start to buy into it. It's the same crap when people like Donald Trump was going on about the China virus and this, that. He's just, it's a catchphrase it's easy to remember, and it gets a lot more traction than it ought to. So our state legislature passed that regulation. And I have no problem with them actually coming up and doing this if that's what they wanted to do. Because part of me believes that there's something to be said about somebody who's genetically born with advantages that their opponent doesn't. That just seems unfair. And I don't care what cosmetically chemical change you do, you can't rewrite the human chromosome. So if you're born with a certain set of schematics, you're going to carry those schematics no matter how much polish and plastic and surgery and stuff that you get to make it change. So, you can go a long way, but there's still certain limits. I have no problem. What I have a problem with is how they went about it. Our Republican-dominated Congress, at the behest of our Republican governor, ran this through like this. And I hear this, so when I hear this crap about partisan politics and partisan this and partisan that, we got along with both members of both sides of the aisle. Well, at the end of the day, that's all it is. That's it right there. That's all there is to it. Let's just do it twice, and we can, because that's how they do it to you and me. And we just let them roll along, keep doing it. We don't ever hold any of these people accountable. So much for the due process of law, of how we should establish things, how there should be a healthy debate, how there should be an honest opportunity for the opposing side to try to sway votes. But at the end of the day, there's no when it's all absolutes. There's no partisan play whatsoever on the other side these days, and in part it's driven by this. They're just fed up with the crap, and other part of it's being this is how we're going to get what we want. What we want is the power. We want power. We want power, and we want power, and we want it now, and we want it forever, and and so it's just like. So we have this two-party system, but it's all locked down to a point where there's nothing that the Democrats can do whatsoever. I mean, they've even managed to ruin the filibuster, because this variations on the filibuster that's in play these days, that's a crock of shit. I mean, should they get rid of the filibuster? Fuck yeah, they need to get rid of the damn thing as they got it now. It should be established the way it originally was, right? One dude, one lady decides they want to push a point. They get up and they keep whatever. They sit there and read the phone book until they can't. The minute they can't, they got to sit back down. Whether it's 10 hours or 10 days later, they're done, and then the vote can proceed. And you still end up not getting, maybe, just maybe that filibuster might have achieved something, but it's not this weird arbitrary. No. They just made it. They made it so it's just easy for the lesser side to make a deal. Except I've noticed that it doesn't seem to work for both parties. So the Democrats, there was no point in the Iowa Democratic Caucus of doing a filibuster because they didn't have the numbers in any way whatsoever, and it would have got voted down anyway, because that's how the system's set up now. The filibuster is a joke. And it's a twisted joke that's brought out every now and then to make it like it's something bigger than it actually, and more important than it is, because it's not anymore. It's pretty much ineffectual for what it's originally meant to do, and they can just, at that point, if they're determined to do something, and I've seen it several times now in the past 6-8 months, our governor has just up and decided some grand plans and just rammed them down the throats of the state, because she has control of the Congress, and so our state legislature just basically rubber stamps anything she chooses, and I have to ask myself whenever they do things, what's their motivation? What's their real motivation? What are they getting out of it? Because I don't buy into that, we're trying to look out for the greater interests of the population of the country, and our views may not be your views, but our views aren't necessarily wrong, and there's a lot to be said with that. But it's just like the talk about, well, if just by chance Trump does get reelected and he comes back into power, they got a whole lot of plans basically to destroy the government as we know it. They wanted to rewrite the government and reform it in their image to give them all the ultimate power, right? More of that 1930s Germany crap that we keep seeing in play today. So, I mean, when we talk about banning stuff, preventing them from preventing gay people, starting with the transsexuals. Let's start with the transsexuals, but we're also going to ban the gay people because we don't want gays doing this. Once again, really, at the end of the day, America, what the fuck do you care? What do you care what somebody else's sexual preferences are? As long as they're not in your face and making a pass at you personally, and you're offended because I'm a red-blooded American man, and I can't tolerate the idea of another man making a pass at me. Well, fuck you, dude. You ain't no man. You're a punk kid. You're a punk kid in a grown-ass body, and you act like a punk kid because you got no fucking brains, no common sense. That person's sexual gives a shit what they do, as long as they're not doing it. My philosophy, as long as you're not doing it in front of me. But then that's common courtesy. I wouldn't want to be somebody, I wouldn't want people seeing me, because I'm old and fat and ugly anyway. So I get it, but it's common sense. So it's the same thing. What you do in your bedroom, who do they care? What does that got to do with me? So when they start pushing this agenda and this commentary that, it's all about the children, it's all about the children. We gotta save the children. It's like the abortion crisis and this abortion nightmare that's come up in this country. That's yet another one of these elements. And keep that in mind, my fellow Americans who don't listen to my video and my ranting, because why would you? Who the fuck am I? I'm Rick. I'm nobody. I'm probably worse than nobody. I'm probably one of the bad guys y'all think that need to be put up against the wall and shot. It's all a matter of personal preferences and crap. So in this case, I got married twice and got 3 damn kids, and God knows how many I don't know about out there. I am quite confident in my personal preferences and how the world works. I have no issues. And so from that venue, I grew up with relatives who did have issues, and on both sides. And it was I don't want to say problematic or troubling to watch some of the interactions, because some of them were actually terrified of the idea that somebody was gay, and somehow that made them less of a person because they're affiliated with them. Your cousin, your brother's gay, and oh my God, you can't. It turns out your uncle's gay. Oh my God, you can't handle it. And that's part society and part of how we are indoctrinated and how things are driven into our head. It's part of that. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus cut off his dick and become a woman? Well, probably not. Probably gonna say no. But did that happen to people in his era? Oh yeah, the Bible's full of things people called eunuchs. Cut your manhood off completely, and then for all intents and purposes, you had all of it without any of the pesking problems of having some kind of sexual organ, which was horrific. Now you got to look at just briefly look at a couple of the comments that about Viserys or whatever in Game of Thrones to understand the real life of those poor bastards. I mean, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, no, they want to use this as somehow this tiny percentage of the population. And statistic, we're back to facts. Facts are the facts, man. You know what? Your Chevy works a certain way. Combustion engines, based on science and fact, work in a certain fucking way. And you can sit there and go, oh, I don't think it works that way at all. But you know what? They don't care what you think. The fact is, the facts are that the V8 engine or a 6-cylinder functions in a specific way, or it wouldn't work. Fuel goes in, gets ignited, compression fires off a piston, shoves the piston down against the damn shaft, the shaft turns, repeat. Come up with a different way from how that functions, and you got a radically different engine that works. And we've got those. Jet engines work completely different. Rotary engines work a little different than inline piston engines. So, I mean, the functions are somewhere. But the point I'm getting at, though, is certain things are fact, and there ain't nothing you can claim that they're fake or they're false or they're whatever, or you don't believe the science. Well, give us a fuck what you think or what you believe. See, there's the problem, right? There's the problem. That's the absolute. Well, I give a damn. I care what you think and what you believe. And I would like to help you see my side of things, but I don't think I need to jam it down your throat and demand it. So when we talk about this tiny percent of the population who become transsexuals in the first place, and then a slightly larger percentage that are cross-dressers and people who want to be but not quite willing to go to the extreme of physical change, of changing the physical body to become that, but they're quite confident, quite comfortable living in that pseudo stage their whole lifetime. And then a larger percentage of actual just gay people, or people who are sexual preferences and attractions are based off of their comparable genders. And so statistically speaking, historically speaking, it's there all along. No, Christianity doesn't like this sort of stuff because it says in the Bible that this sort of stuff is bad. But the truth is, it doesn't say any of that. I'm sorry, but the Bible does not. Any of the New James Testament version of the Bible I grew up with and got beat up with and thrown at and smacked across the head I don't know how many times with, I ain't gonna say any of that stuff, Chuck. No, it don't. Now, it does hint at some negative stuff. So, like Sodom and Gomorrah, and why they were chosen because they were dens of iniquity. Well, they were dens of iniquity because of a lot of different things, and not because of sexuality, not because particularly because there were homosexuals going on there, or bisexual things going on there. There was hedonistic things going on there of a grand scheme, of much worse and much darker, much wider. Because when you live in a hedonistically driven environment, your whole society and religious beliefs are revolving around hedonism, do a little research on what that really means, because that's extremes. Extreme gluttony is hedonism. People who eat themselves into people end up weighing 900 pounds did so because what? Because they're genetically engineered to do that? No. That maybe there's some kind of problem in their genetic makeup, and that one individual now has some kind of problem that's going to force them to gain weight. Yeah, that is a statistical possibility, and I think it actually happens, right? But for the lion's share of people, their life sucks so bad that all they want to do is sit home, and the only comfort they get is to eat. So they sit home by themselves usually, or in small groups of people, with small support groups, and they just watch TV all day and sleep and eat and sleep and watch TV all day, and then before you know it, they just explode up, and they become a very horrible meme on somebody's after 6 o'clock news, while the fire department's cutting the side of their house open so they can use a forklift to get them out. And there was nothing anybody was willing to do or could do or step up. Sometimes it's not your business, not my business. Sometimes it just takes a kind word to give people encouragement. But in this case, who are we really? Who are they? The people pushing this narrative. What are they really choosing to get out of it? Because they're focused on such a tiny percentage of the population that's not necessarily even related to a slightly larger population of people who has a particular choice. And your sexual preference should be no different than your political affiliation, as far as I'm concerned. If you're Democrat, Republican, and Independent, you're straight, you're bi, or you're gay, who cares? Who cares? Why does that matter to you and me? Oh, well, they're going to indoctrinate our children. They're going to turn our children gay. Okay. Does it always work that way? Is that how this works? So see, I'm trying to get my head around. Help me out with this, guys and gals. She men, she girls, whatever. I don't give a shit what your sexuality are. You're a person. You're a human being. It's how you comport yourself and how you treat other people. How you treat the animals around you, how you treat nature, how you treat yourself. We treat nature worse than we teach anything else, and then we treat ourselves. So when we talk about, we're our own worst enemies, no, we're nature's own worst enemy. We're the worst enemy for everything that exists, and that's the truth. It may be the salvation for everything that exists too, but that's because we're picking the problem, and then someday we're going to have to scramble and pray and hope that we can actually fix the problems that we chose to ignore for decades and decades until it becomes a big problem. So when it comes to indoctrinating the kids, okay, so we already have a whole slew of people pushing to defund libraries and school systems. Another whole slew of people, in some cases part of the same group, that's pushing to ban books. Well, the only reason we haven't had big bonfires of these horribly mind-twisting books that they want to ban in the streets is because, well, we're at least savvy enough to know how really horrific that would look on national news, especially to the world, that we'd avoid it. The fact that we haven't makes me think that it's actually an effort out there to suppress this, right? I'm just saying. So the fact that a percentage of our country is targeting another percentage, mostly for political reasons, to stir up their political base, to get them to get all foam in the mouth over some issue that really has absolutely no ban. So your neighbor's section, tell me this. I mean, honestly here, my friends, that's just you and me, honestly. the sexuality of your neighbor or a coworker or the lady who works at the bank that you frequent, the guy that's at the mechanic that works on your car occasionally, all these people, I don't know, your cousin, your sister, your brother, your your parent, how does any of this, their sexual preference, have any importance to you directly, as opposed to things like, you know, what kind of militant organization do they belong to? What's their political beliefs? Are they willing to burn your neighborhood down because they don't want you in it? Because we just simply can't get along as a group of people? I struggle with the idea of understanding, you know, just what it is, how this matters individually and personally. So we have this group of people that's hell-bent on dictating what education can be performed and provided in our schools. We also have a movement to defund those schools. Iowa did it pretty slick. And they'll tell you that they didn't. Oh, no, no, this just will make the public schools better. So our wonderful governor, Kim Reynolds, with her puppet Democrat or Republican-driven legislature, rammed through a change that gives $7,500 vouchers to parents. So if you to choose to send your kid to a private school. Any of that going on in your home state? This stuff. What does that really mean? First thing in my mind was, what is Kim Reynolds getting out of it? What does she really give a shit? Because she don't. This never was an issue and suddenly come out of nowhere. So either she's getting some kind of kickback, some of these private schools are funding her campaign perhaps, or perhaps she has some kind of investment in some of these schools. I don't know. Or perhaps this is just a personal pet peeve of hers that she's always wanted to fuck over and screw the public education system. Because if they had their way, we would have no public education whatsoever. It would be completely privatized education. And you don't, how well do you think that's going to go? You already got a poor population that can't afford basics. We struggle to pay just to do the basics to give ourselves the illusion of what should be a nice life. When you're spent every day worried and nonstop about paying this and paying that, and what happens if this fails, or what happens if my boss croaks and I need a new job. I mean, 1 week, my truck's down for a week and I don't get a week's pay and I'm in trouble. And it took us 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks to catch up. And that was 4 weeks of me working 50 plus hours to do that catching up. So that tells me there's not a lot of wiggle room in my personal home life. And I've done everything I can do to improve it within reason without getting into some extreme change. So at the end of the day, I'm too tired, sore, broke, and indifferent to care what anybody else's preferences are. You know, my sister is gay and she's married to a nice lady and they have a great life together and they seem to be happy. And this only came out in the last few 6 or 7 months, and my sister has been miserable for 35 years. And she sounds like she's finally happy with her life right now. She's successful. They have a nice house. She drives a new car. She's far better off than I am. She still struggles. I mean, she still struggles like everybody else. I mean, she's better off than I am, yes. And that's in part because her spouse has a much nicer income than and my spouse doesn't. I mean, and it's just the way the world works. And her spouse is on disability, but she's on a government disability and gets a lot of money, where my wife's on Social Security and does not get a lot of money. So, I mean, you know, she gets my wife gets $1,000 and she gets $3,500. It's just a matter because of which part of the government's paying it. That's how that played out. But the point though is, her preferences, I don't give a shit. I never did. I never cared. And she tried to hide it. She's been most for like avoiding it and dodging it and pretending, just avoiding the subject if she's embarrassed and scared or worried or whatever. And at the end of the day, I didn't care. You know, gay couples can be just as miserable as any married couple I know. Just knock yourself out. Why shouldn't you be miserable? Make yourself happy. If you get yourself happy, you got a partner, so be it. And if it means married, if you're married legally, then legally you should have all the rights that a married couple has, regardless of what your genders are. That should matter nothing to nobody. But yet it seems every now and then it becomes a squeaking point. And we're at this squawking, squeaking, bitching point now about this. Somehow the gays and the transgenders are corrupting our kids because they want to increase their numbers? I don't know. God wouldn't want this. Hypothetically, I just want to say, ask this. Hypothetically, what are the chances? What are the chances that, genetically speaking, we have more? It's from what I understand, there are more openly acknowledged sexual orientation differences in the world today than at any point in our history. And the numbers are quite large. They're tiny, they're minuscule when compared to the general population of straights or normals. But the fact of the matter is that the percentages are extremely higher than they used to be. Than at any point in recorded where we've been recording this sort of stuff, from what I understand. Now, I haven't done a deep dive into that crap because, once again, I don't give a shit about it. I got enough problems on my plate to worry about somebody's gender, facts and changes and whatever. So who fucking cares? So, but the point I'm getting at is just perhaps evolution. Genetics. We've trying to kill ourselves by overpopulating our planet. We're trying to create a planet we're getting a population on our planet that's not sustainable. So perhaps just one way in nature's way of somehow trying to alleviate that or fix that. It's just like, you can say, well, that's not true. Well, then maybe it is, and maybe it's not. I'm not a scientist, neither are you, fucking nuts, so don't pretend like you are. Now, some of you folks are going to be educated, and very few of you guys have sat through this video this long, because if you did, right? I mean, I listen to long ass videos all the time, but that's because my job involves me driving between customers, and sometimes it could be 2 hours between jobs, and I'm literally in that truck 2 hours. So I like listening to crap other than music on the radio, because music's fine, but it just gets redundant. It makes me want to fall asleep. I'd rather have something that's got some topic going on that I can either engage in or mentally wrestle with or be entertained by. And it varies. So that's why I listen to all kinds of stuff. I listen to all kinds of podcasts and all kinds of documentaries and a wide variety of things, because sometimes when you're bouncing down the highway, you're not supposed to be looking at your phone in the first place. I just hit the next thing that's just hit whatever's coming up next, because it's just easier and safer to do that. And I end up with some pretty crazy shit sometimes. And then that's not even talking about doing a search. You all know, if you've done a Google search, the results can be, where did this come from? How did this anyway connect to this? Anyway, so, trying to indoctrinate the kids. Our whole society's doing that, friend. The kids are getting indoctrinated by the social media immediately. They're between TV and cable and the internet itself and all the stuff that we post as human beings, all the crazy shit, things like this crazy, stupid, nobody, fat guy from Iowa blabbering about shit that really has no impact on nothing for anybody. But the point I'm getting at is the last 2 generations specifically, the last 3, have been spoon-fed this shit. Spoon-fed nothing. We got an intravenous drip now going. When you and us older folks or middle crisis folks, however you want to look at it, when we were kids, we were being spoon-fed this shit. We had to actually read it. We had to listen to our peers tell us about it, or our parents bitch about it. We might see something on the evening news, but we didn't have access to all this extra social media until we did, and things started to really ratchet up. Now it's a magnitude different from what it was 20 years ago. 10 years ago. So the fact is, the last couple of generations of kids, and for the rest of humanity's future, unless something drastically changes, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to be exposed to shit constantly, nonstop, and things that they really, in some cases, a lot of stuff they really shouldn't be, that they're not old enough yet to comprehend or to understand, or to really understand the complicated nature of some things. It's real easy to look at one of these images and go, hey, well, this, and this. It's another thing to look at one of these images and go, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? Okay. This is a channel is about talking, history revisited. I revisit history. Well, America, we revisit history daily, every day. Sometimes every minute of the day. It's just how you want to look at it. So, tens of millions of people are exterminated in concentration camps that set up by the Nazi Party, not necessarily in Germany alone, but because there was some in Poland and some in other countries. But at the end of the day, they had several programs initiated. But it wasn't the Jews that they started with, was it? Was it, America? Who did they start with first? They started with the gays, what anybody they considered perverted by their standards, by the standards of the company that they decide that they're going to keep. So by their standards, these people needed to die. They needed to be eliminated completely, so we could any chance of that genetic gene pool, because obviously it's a genetic thing. Obviously you're born gay. Maybe you are. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're born. We're born with chromosomes, and we're born with triggers. That certain things in our existence are going to trigger certain things in our growing up. Some people are born to be large and tall and fat and old, and some people are born to be skinny and short and small and thin and young and die young. And some people are born to die almost immediately, because that's genetically the genetic dice roll that nature does every time two people of opposite sex get together with the sole purpose of having an offspring. So they started with the gays and the mentally challenged. That's what they did. They started with killing them. First packing them off to concentration camps, which they were just, they took them a minute to get the murder machine incorporated into full swing, but they started with it, and they didn't start with the Jews. They started tormenting the Jews and tormenting and persecuting them. Yes, it was during that area that a lot of Jews saw the writing on the wall, and the ones who were capable of packing up and getting out got out. A lot of them couldn't move. They couldn't afford to pack up and leave the country and go to another country and start over. And some of them waited to the last second when they realized that the writing was not only on the wall, but the wall was now caving in on them. And they managed to escape at the last minute. And the ones that didn't, well, believe the history books or not, my friends. Believe it or not. But the facts are the facts, and the history books are full of it. You go to Germany today and tell the average German that this shit didn't happen, they're likely to beat you to death. And that ain't no joke. That's not a jest. That's fact. Those people over there are extremely sensitive still to this stuff. The goods, the bads, the horrors, and the what ifs, all of it. So that's where we started. The Germans started banning books too. About the same time they started banning books, they started pushing agendas that the mentally challenged of the world and the sexual deviants of the world need to go. Imagine what they would think about the homeless. I don't have any information on how the homeless operated and functioned in 1930s Europe, let alone 1930s Germany, nor do I have any inclination or idea if there were any programs whatsoever, or if they even gave a shit about that portion of the population, whether or not the German government did anything for or about homeless people. But it sure wasn't too many months ago, I remember hearing one of our politicians, and then suddenly a whole slew of them start aping that politician's comment. Well, we can solve that homeless population. We just move them out to the desert and set them up in a camp. That's brilliant, dude, man. That solves all the problems, don't it? Has to get all these pesky problem people that's drug abusers and mentally unstable individuals and people who just simply can't afford to rent anymore. They're still working 3 jobs and sleeping in their car because they can't pay rent anymore, because the rent's just, they priced them out of any reasonable rent at all. We'll just pack all these losers off. We'll just, let's make sure everybody knows that they're a loser. So we'll put a big L on their chest, or put an L on their, it's just a big old tattoo across their face of an L, right? Yeah, right. I don't know. Maybe you put, I don't know, the one side of the face could be purple. Let's tattoo white and purple so they can stand out, so we can point them out in the crowd in a hurry. That way we can shuffle them back off to the camp, because you put people out in a camp, then what? You think these people are going to stay there in that camp? They're not just going to try to go back to wherever they came from, or go back to the nearest place that they're familiar with? There's a percentage of these people are not going to stay for you. So are you planning to put fences around this camp to keep them from, for their own safety, to keep outsiders from coming in and exploiting them and taking advantage of them? Because they do all the time. These people in the street, these homeless people and shit, they're getting exploited. They're getting taken advantage of by each other and by other people above them. They got a drug addiction. I don't think their drug dealers are turning them off. As long as they show up with that cash, they're getting their stuff, right? Same goes with the liquor. You got an alcoholic, and it's obvious this person's homeless, and he wants to buy a bottle of booze, and you're gonna sell it to him. And because this is America, he's entitled to buy it. It's his right to buy it, and it's his right to live his life the way he chooses to live his life. So is it by our right as society to pack them up and ship them off to a camp somewhere and stick them behind a fence? Because at that point, then what? Do we shut them off? We deny any alcohol or drugs or anything like that to be accessible in the camps, and now we're going to force them to dry up or to come to terms with their addictions? Yeah, we have camps like that today. It's called prison. Except you can still get drugs and alcohol in prison, and in the right prisons you can get guns and sexual partners of your preference. That's a true fact too, friends. That is an honest to hard true fact about American prison system today. Your tax dollars at work. Oh yeah, right, yes sir. So, German Holocaust began with people prosecuting gay people and mentally ill people. So what is our big deal today? We have the gay people we're going to prosecute, and we're going to prosecute the homeless people and the drug addicted people, because wasn't it President Trump that said he's just going to shoot them? He's going to execute them. If you get caught as a drug dealer, they're just going to execute you. So much for due process. So much for your chance. Doesn't matter. No matter what happens to you, we're going to kill you. Why even bother? Why didn't we stop there? Why don't we just put you up against the nearest tree and shoot you? Get a rope, hang you. Come on, you're danging. Come on, hang it, dang it. You want to hang him? Come on, you want to hang him. Society dog whistles, man. That's some of the most, just the most shameful stuff that we pull. Yeah. So let's ban the books. Let's ban the books. Let's kill the. Excuse me. Let's ban the transsexuals and ban the gays, because that's what we're going to do. And this Christian rape, because what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Jesus would lock them up. Jesus would put them up behind a fence. Jesus would put them in a gas chamber and go. Is that the Jesus you grew up with? Or is that something somebody's corrupted? Because you know what? And part of that Christian belief and some of those fine sayings that come out of the Bible, they talk about not falling for false prophets. Don't follow false prophets. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the bullshit. America, my fellow Americans, don't fall for the bullshit. Open your mind a little bit and look at it. And if at the end of the day it still tastes bad in your mouth, it doesn't have to. And just so we're on the same page here, so we're all clear about this, I don't care what a person's sexual belief is. And unless they inflict it on me personally, and then at that point I have a problem with it. So more important is that my problem is that you shouldn't enforce that sort of thing on anybody. It should be a matter of choice, and given the options. Are we, do we teach it in school? I think you have to teach it as part of a broader spectrum. If you're going to teach social sciences at all, and social science is a science, it's still a science, fucknut, with lots of facts and figures and theories and studies and, experiments that have gone on to confirm or deny certain ways that things are done, how humanity acts and reacts and thinks amongst each other and ourselves, But we have to watch that stuff. I agree. But where do we stop? And at what point does that, our enforcing our narrow beliefs on the wider group of people, a problem? It's just like religion, right? This same group would push that the only allowed religion that should be available in the United States, that should be openly acknowledged and be in a position of power, is the Christian faith, the Christian church, not the Catholic Church. We don't want the Catholics in charge. They'll song and dance about that because they still separate Christianity from the Catholic faith, even though the truth is they're all part and partial. You can make the nuanced differences, and we could have several videos on that because I can see the stands on both sides of that, and I understand the basic breakdowns a lot more than what it might seem, because it's easy to sit here and make commentary off the cuff. It's another thing to actually back that commentary up with some knowledge. You don't have to have a huge amount of knowledge. That's one of the advantages of our current internet social system, is the fact that at the touch of your button, you have never had more information available to you and than any human being in history has ever had than you have now. We have this beautiful option and opportunity to access basically the world's libraries and the history books of the world and anything and everything that's gotten posted up there and placed on the internet. And the very fact that entities such as YouTube have gone to great lengths to not segregate things. What I mean by that is they'll let you post pretty much anything, even some pretty derogatory crap. You may not get any traffic, you may not get any monetization, you may not get any attention, but they'll let it post it, and then more importantly, it remains in there. So the fact is, all of our beliefs, all of our views, all of our different takes on the universe can be accumulated and shared with each other via this social media. But more importantly, it's also being saved. So for future references, assuming that humanity doesn't take a deep dive somewhere or something else occurs, because statistically the dice are not in our favor, everything we do, this very video right now, me doing this, there's a good chance that 100 years from now it's still going to be available to people. And they'll go, who the fuck was this guy? What the hell is he saying? And half of what he says makes no sense, and he babbles and rambles on, and he's ranting and raving for what? But it'll still be there. And a piece of the pie. In some way, this is a bit of my legacy. This is a bit of our legacy when we create videos like this. You might take that into mind if you don't create videos you arm, that you might think about doing something. Because this is one of those things. You're leaving a mark as to who and what and why. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what's a video worth? Right? That's something that our politicians today, a lot of them fail to understand. That you can sit there and do a lot of stuff, and it's openly caught by 1,000 damn cameras that everybody out there, everybody and their dog, damn near. In some cases, the dogs too. They got cameras too, and some got, I see them at the pet store. So you can have your dog wired for sound and for sound and motion, and internet. Yes, you could. And so all that stuff's available. It's when they sit there and say, "Well, I never said that." The fuck you didn't. I saw you with your own words and your own mouth when you was live on national television in front of 40 million other motherfuckers that was tuned in at that moment, going on about how you were going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then the next day you're going, oh, that was misconstrued. They took that out of context. Bullshit, dude. I listened to it from beginning to end. If there was any misstruing going on, it was because your mouth was misstruing it. You were purposely, with the intention of coming back the next day and saying that it was being misquoted. So we're still talking at the end of the day, full circle. Why do we care? And more importantly, why is it the people, the ones that are really pushing this train of thought, this agenda, that are fueling the fire? what do they really care? What do they get out of it? Because it comes out that a lot of these politicians that sit there and make commentary and negatory and derogatory and anti this and anti that, they themselves have history. Everybody has a history. Yeah, everybody has a history. So we see histories of some of them in their frat days dressing up in drag. But that's what you do when you're having fun and you're drunk and you're in college. Shit happens. Should that be held against you? Should 20, 30 years later, should somebody go, oh, this fellow's against this, but he's against the transgenders and he's against gay people. Well, he was a cross-dresser back in the day. Well, that's a unfair and stupid thing, analogy to bring up in comparison. One guy doing a fret thing at a party. That's another thing which comes out later that, he was going to, out on a regular basis, to participate in shows as a drag queen, as a cross-dresser. And he does that a number of times. That's a bit more than just being at a frat party, getting drunk and being silly. Bunch of 20-somethings getting crazy. It ain't the same. It's not even in the same fruit basket, my friend. It's not apples and oranges. It's fucking apples and a Buick hubcap. I mean, it's just completely two different things. Completely different. So you can't even begin to. People who try to mesh them together, you end up with a freaking a hubcap sitting on your table with a fruit sitting in it. And it's still got two completely different things that really don't belong together sitting on your table. A third thing that really never should have a hubcap with fruit-filled hubcap sitting on your table. Just saying, right? So the agenda of these people is not to change the social mores, to eliminate the transgenders, or eliminate the gays, or to eliminate, anybody. Their goal is to gain power and to stir up their base enough to get enough people to vote for them so they can retain the power they have and to gain more power. Because if they actually have an actual agenda behind a lot of this social crap that they're pushing, these narratives that they're pushing today, you really need to wake up and ask yourself, where the fuck are they going? Because if they achieve this opens up the possibility of the next thing. And if they achieve this, and then we open the next thing, what could that possibly be? And if we follow the blueprints of history, we watch the stuff that's happened in the past and use that as a lodestone or a comparison. I mean, you can't say verbatim that this is how this is going to go, because the societies are different, the situation's different, the environment's different, technology changes things, all that stuff's different. Still, there's enough similarities in here to say this is a possible pattern, because this did happen and this is how the outcome came. So if we see this stuff starting to echo this, they're starting to sound a lot like each other, it's not hard to see where this goes. And I'm going to tell you right now, my friends, my fellow Americans, my friends, especially your non-middle-aged white cracker motherfuckers, you ain't one of my group of people. You ain't part of my group of people. Y'all might be thinking twice about some of this shit. Maybe thinking a little harder. Maybe thinking 3 times harder. You're an African American in this country. If you're a Mexican in this country, and you are voting for the Republican side, the same people that's pushing these agendas that potentially are going to lead to a genocide of some sort, because the real possibilities, the real possibility that could happen. What would that genocide entail? Because if you think that there'll be another Jewish Holocaust, no. Generally, history doesn't. We're doomed to repeat history, but we don't necessarily repeat history in the exact same way. So, if you were a racist, fascist-minded individual who's totally, absolutely convinced that your particular gene pool is the proper and correct gene pool for everything, everybody else is second fiddle or worse. So if it's not the Jews that would be targeted for some sort of mass genocide program, who would be? Who are your candidates? The narrows it down. The candidates list is pretty damn short, and I'll leave that up to you to make that decision, because I'm pretty potent in my mind where that would likely to go. And I'm not the only person that thought that or thinks that. I know that for a fact too, because Harry Turtledove is a highbrow academician sort from out west. He's wrote a whole shitload of novels, science fiction stuff, I grant you. He has done some, it's almost tome-like, it's almost like a history book that he's did a alternate history for World War I and II, and what if kind of scenarios. And he was very, if you've never read any of his works, I highly recommend reading it. I wish they would make a movie or a Netflix series on this guy's stuff, because this stuff is, oh wow. I mean, it's just, and the irony is that so, you can go in it and read it, and you can see the what he did was you know, what if President Lincoln didn't get assassinated, or what if he lived through the assassination? What do you do? You know, how would his life progress? Well, things would have changed. Perhaps, you know, he gets shot and then he's no longer capable to be president and somebody else takes over for him. And then eventually, you know, he finds himself in his 90s still representing the Democratic or the Republican Party, but he's now out in the middle of the South Dakota Badlands on a freaking train going to some other little punky little town for another punky little political party thing. Says he's trying to still do his best to support his party. That's a Turtledove. And that's just a tiny little sidebar in there. You know, it wasn't Patton, it was Colonel Custer that develops the early beginnings of the Armored Corps philosophy for the American Army. And it, yeah, and the Allies were different, and the Axis powers were different, and they were very based on very real world facts. Things that went this way, and the real history went this way. But if they had gone the other way, what kind of different path would we have taken? So, once again, my fellow Americans, my peers, my friends, my indifferent viewers, the odd crazy person, all them Russian and Chinese, you know, IT guys that are busy trying to fuck with Americans' system of everything, right? Jesus, dude, really? Does this shit really care? Does this shit, at the end of the day, directly impact you? Yeah, it's hard to come home and find out your kid says, oh, I'm gay. It's just life, man. That'd be no different than them coming home and saying, I'm going to be celibate. Or I'm going to never have a family. I'm never going to get married. I don't want children. I don't want a relationship, because relationships are too much work. And relationship in the modern era is, they're damn near set up to fail. It's just like everything is working against you. And it's so hard. So those families that manage to succeed without having some level of trauma or I don't know, dysfunction, my hat's off to you, man. I've struggled with understanding what the hell, what quote normal is supposed to be when it comes to anything. You know, guy across the street, I don't care what his sexual preferences are. Guy named Eric, he's a nice dude, lives by himself, hardly never frickin' home, has a whole pile of damn junk vehicles in his driveway, and I don't think he has a license plate for any of them. He just keeps driving different vehicles and shit. I know we've watched him for the last 5 or 4 years. He seems to not like to pay his water bill, because they come out and shut it off. He goes out and turns it back on. He got one of them long little handled jobbies that lets him turn the valve on and off. They come out and finally took the valve out. He ain't got to water it all now. I mean, and that's just from observing across the street. So why do I care what his preferences are? What do I care? What does that got to do with me? That's not going to impact me. It's not going to affect me, right? You know, if somebody in school wants to try to indoctrinate my kid, I think I'd be more worried about what that person's trying to pull, as opposed to this indoctrination crap. If I got an adult talking about sexual crap to my kid in school, that, well, I want to fucking know, because hello, There's a whole lot of problems there in that little scenario. It's got, who gives a shit about what the trying to occur? Well, you should open up your feelings and embrace your feminine side. Okay, so my biggest key point is, if you're going to have a sex change and you want to be, if you want to go from being a man to being a woman, or a woman to being a man, you never hear the opposite side of that. So we hear all this men who become women who now participate in professional sports. That's our problem, because you never hear the opposite. Women becoming men, then participating in male sports, because apparently that's never come up. That is, I've yet to hear anything in the hundreds of YouTube, thousands of hours of political bullshit and other crap that gets spewed up on my laptop and phone on a weekly and monthly basis. I never heard nothing like that. So yeah, that's a problem. So it's be no different. It's the same categories. They make the same argument that you should not allow a full-ass adult to participate in children's sports. Junior there is 18 years old, or Junior there is going to be 17 years old, and he's in a senior in high school, and we're going to let him participate in 8th grade football. What? Would you ever allow that? Would you ever allow, a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall athlete compete with people half their size and half their age? Would you? No. It's kind of a no-brainer, right? So that's not a big deal. Yeah. So when the state's legislature and governor basically rubber stamps and rams us through in the middle of the night, nobody's allowed to really say no about it. I don't think it matters. At the end of the day, a handful of trans kids will be denied the opportunity to participate in sports. That's a terrible tragedy. It is terrible. It's so either they need to have a non-gender equivalent sport, because that's something that doesn't seem to get brought up very often, and when it does, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek and blown off as being ridiculous. But part of our problem with sports has been, for the last 40 or 50 years, is the fact that it's gender segregated. There's a lot of women who wanted to play football, and a lot of women who wanted to play softball or baseball, and so on and so on. And because of our society standards have set, the society moral standards have decided that you can't do this, or it's not proper for a young lady to participate in this, we're slowly, people are eroding this and chipping away at it. They got a long way to go, but that's no different, right? It's kind of in that same weird category. So we get to the more radical other talking point about banning, the conversion therapies, preventing kids from having surgeries or taking the hormone suppressors or the hormone growth tablets. They vary from one thing to the next, from what I understand. Once again, I don't make it's not a topic that I went on my way to understand a bunch of crap about, because it don't affect me personally, and other than indirectly, and I don't know of anybody, I don't know of any trans people directly. I'm not going to lie and sit there and say that I'm not sometimes uncomfortable around some people, but it's more about how they present themselves and their persona than about their preferences. And I'll give you an example of that. There are gay men that are so gay that it's ludicrous. It's almost comical as to how hard they want to present themselves as a feminine person. So they overcompensate, and they become aggressively overcompensating in the process, which at that point becomes like overwhelming, and that just scares the hell out of me. It makes me nervous as hell, because I don't know, I'm more afraid of saying something wrong and offending somebody at that point than I am about, the situation. But I don't find myself in that situation very, very often. It's very rare. Now, part of my job, okay, it takes me out and be around lots of people, and so it's like occasionally things crop up. It's just like occasionally we all meet people, and you sit there and go, "Is that a dude? Is that a dude? Is that a woman?" And you can be completely wrong. It turned out to be, yeah, that's a dude, or yeah, that's a woman. And it's just physically how they look. because genetically speaking, all the combinations are viable. And then there's the ones that dress, they just dress that way, and it's just, they don't care about their physical health. I've met a few women that they don't give a shit about their personal, they don't care about makeup, they don't care about doing their hair fancy, they just keep their hair cut where it's easy to manage it. They have no trouble getting grease and getting their arms greasy and getting into dirty, nasty stuff. They don't make a big deal about it. They're not feminine in a lot of ways. I mean, I see that in my personal life a little bit too, but that's just compared to others, people who go overboard. The other one that makes me terribly uncomfortable, and it's more from a personal digestive thing. What I mean by that is some people, and this is like cross-dressers. Now, I would never try cross-dressing, and I've never felt the urge to do it or the curiosity to do it. But two, I have always been a big dude. It's like John Candy big. Google John Candy if you don't remember who he was. Not nearly as funny as John Candy, but in that kind of staturistic frame of his. So I use him as an example because he did a movie where he actually dressed up as part of his, they're in some kind of security guard company or something, and him and his buddy are failed cops, and they're trying to redeem themselves. Anyway, they get into a place in a situation, and they change their appearance in order to blend in. And so he dresses up as a woman, and I'm thinking, dude, you're the ugliest woman I've ever seen. And that's how I would view myself. I found myself like, man, there ain't no amount of makeup in the world, no amount of cosmetic surgery in the world going to make you look like a pretty girl. It ain't ever going to happen. And no offense, I've met women that are never going to be pretty. They're never going to be pretty. And I've met dudes that I'm one of those. Not going to ever be pretty. Not going to be a handsome individual. Just don't have that frame or that charisma to pull it off. So I've seen on videos, the Young Turks, for example, have had a transgender lady on there as a talk show host for a few, and I hate to say it, but I've only seen her in a few videos, and I haven't seen her since, so I wonder if she's either changed positions in a different position in their company, or I'm just not connecting to those videos anymore. But it's hard to look at her. It's nothing against her personally, him, whatever personally. It's got to do with just me in my mind, I can't deal with it. And it's just that I look away and I find myself being conscious aware of this. And I force yourself to have eye contact with people, and sometimes it's painful. And it's painful because your mind is rebelling against what it is you're dealing with. And it's, in this case, the heavy makeup and the overweight face of an obvious dude trying to be a woman and not doing a good job of it. And it's not because they didn't do any better, or that they failed in their attempt. It's just that my view on things, my individual view, just like your individual view. So all of our views are individually made up, and they matter to us individually, but we also influence others. So we also influence our children. We influence our children's reactions and actions to the world around them far more than their peers and their schools will ever do. So once again, if they finds out that somebody in your kid's class is trying to teach them inappropriate stuff for their age bracket, you definitely want to know about it. But should that material be completely banned from the school? At what age group is it okay for these banned books to be present? Because they're purposely being obtuse with this whole thing. They're purposely doing it. So here in Iowa, they're scaring the shit out of a bunch of the damn librarians and people that run the schools, to the point where they're taking out things that that doesn't qualify under this. But you know what? It has something to do with racial differences and inequality differences and a whole lot of. It's funny how a lot of those other things that get lumped up with the target. So it's the same thing when they sit there and start saying ban the transgenders, ban the gays, and we should what? Come on, Laura Bulbert, Margaret G. Taylor Greene, 100 other motherfuckers. Come on, be honest with your constituents, you would do what? What would you do to these fine folks? What are you really itching to do to another batch of human people? Is that the America future we really want to see? Just saying, man. Is this, is that right there where this is heading? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, from Missy in the corner and myself from the beautiful state of Iowa. Hope you guys have yourself a great weekend.